We have discussed substrings to some extent in this lesson, and I want to continue discussing that in this lecture. And we actually have a substring function, substr, so substring. And what that member function is going to do, you can see I invoke it in this function here. Firstly, I have a declaration, string1, which I initialize to hello human. I have some comments, and then I print this out, string1 is. But actually that is going to be a substring of string1. Okay, so this member function is going to return a new string, a string object initialized to a substring of this object. The argument 1, you can see I have two arguments here. Argument 1 is going to be the index or position of the first character. So in other words, the way we want that copying to start, the first character of the new substring that we want to create. Then the second argument is going to be the number of characters that we want to copy from this object. So in this example, string1, again to create the new substring. So in this example, we start at 0 and we want to copy 5 characters. What we want to do is we want to create a substring hello. We want to print that out. So if I build around that, you can see the substring of string1 is hello. Let me just print out string1 before we actually go and print out that substring. And string1 is going to be hello human, but the substring is going to be hello. Next, let's say we want to print out human. Then of course we want to start at index 6 here. And we want to print out, let's say, 6 characters. Build around that. And you can see we get human printed out with the exclamation for the substring. And we can specify we only want to copy 5 characters from this for the substring. And then that will not include the exclamation. You can see with the substring we only get human printed out now. Okay, so that is a quick look at the substring member function. That is going to create a new string, which is going to be a substring of or created from this object. I'll just do the asterisk here so you can see it is from this object, right? Since the substring member function returns a string, we can of course assign that to another string. So we can do something like this. I'll print that out now. Build run. And that works as before. In the next subsection, I want to discuss the insert member function, which allows us to insert a character or a string into a string. For example, I have this string here initialized to Bob, and at the end of it I want to append the exclamation. So what I can do is I can use the insert member function. I specify the index, in this case 3, and then I specify how many characters I want to add at the end. And I want to add the exclamation, and then I go and print that out. Build run, and we get Bob with an exclamation at the end. Next, let's say we want to add 2 B's at the end, so additional B's at the end, 2 of those, and we specify the index. Then we want to go and add the exclamation. You'll see that if I build a run, I'll build a run here, and you will see the exclamation is not where we want that, and that's because the size is going to change. So I have to take note of the index where the exclamation needs to go. I'll specify that to be at index 5, and you can see this works fine now. And I can go and add more exclamations if I want. So maybe I'll add 5 exclamations, build a run, and you can see that will now work. We get 5 exclamations at the end, following the addition of 2 B characters at the end. So we have a Bob call out here. Alright, that is a quick look at how we can add a character at a specified index or a number of characters at a specified index. Notice that in this next demonstration for string1, I have hello with a space in there, and for the string2 I have a human, but the exclamation is actually in the first string. Now the space doesn't matter all that much, you can add it right here, okay, in the second string, but I'm adding it in this way because of how I'm going to do the next demonstration. That is where we can insert a substring. Currently I want to demonstrate how we can insert that entire string into, so string2 into string1 at index 6. So first I'm just going to print out the size of string1, and then I'm going to print out string 1 following that. So what is string 1 currently, and then I'm going to print out the size again following the insert member function invocation. And that's because I just want to demonstrate that this does have an impact on the size of the string, that is the length or how many characters are within that string. Again, just wanting to emphasize that. Okay, so let me build and run this. We get the size is 7, we get hello human printed out. So human gets inserted here correctly at the specified index that is preceding the exclamation. And then we have following the insert member function invocation, the size or the length is now 12. We can also insert a substring, so a substring of string 2. We want to insert man instead of human. Okay, so how can we insert that substring? Well, we're going to leave it as is currently, and then we're going to do comma, pass in some additional arguments here. We specify the substring index, so where we want that substring to start, followed by the length of the substring, in this case 3 characters for man. You can actually see in the IntelliSense here that you have a default argument. So basically, if I leave that out just for demonstration purposes here, of course all of the characters will be inserted. Let me build and run, and you can see all of those will get inserted. But of course, sometimes you want to be explicit. Sometimes you want to be explicit because let's have humans here, and we only want to insert man. Then we specify 3 characters, that particular substring, man, to be inserted into that is in string 1. So we get hello man printed out, exclamation at the end, and then the size has grown to 10. Okay, so that is a look at how we can insert a standard string into another standard string, and also inserting a substring of another standard string into a standard string. Now let's say we have a character string instead of a standard string. I'll just go and remove the S there, and we can do the same thing. We can insert the C string at that particular index. I'll just build a run, and you can see this works as before. We have inserted a C string into a standard string. Now with the C string version, we do have one called a buffer. So we can specify that we want to insert so many characters from this particular C string. Again, let's say we have humans and we only want to insert human. Then we can specify 5 characters. So I'll build and run, and you can see we get hello human, exclamation instead of hello humans, exclamation. And of course, you can specify 6 if you want the S at the end as well, depending on what you want to do. Those were a couple of demonstrations on how we can insert a C string and then also a standard string into a standard string. I've discussed how we can insert a string into an existing string, but we can also replace characters. So in this example, I have this standard string, string 1, which is initialized to wait, Bob, with an exclamation. Then I have string 2, which is initialized to halt, and I want to replace wait with halt. And then I have the C string here as well for demonstration purposes. First, I'm going to print out string 1, so we can see what that is. Then invoke the replace member function. We start at index 0, so the first element within the string. We want to basically replace the first 4 characters. And we want to replace from string 2, so we want to use this halt here. And we want to replace those first 4 characters. Then following that replace member function invocation, I print out string 1 again. Build and run, we get wait Bob. And then following the replace member function invocation, we get halt Bob. Now, of course, you can decide to replace starting somewhere else. So for example, let's go to index 6, build and run. Now we get wait, comma, halt. Just undo that. As with some of the previous examples, we have overloads to work with character strings as well. So pass in the character string, which is also initialized to halt, and you can see that works as well. String 2 is currently initialized to halt, but let's say we have something else, such as an exclamation or something else. So we have a long string and we only want to use this part of it, so we want to use a substring of string 2 to replace some of the characters in string 1. Well, we can do that, so I'll just make sure we specify that we want to copy from string 2. The substring that we'll copy over will start at index 0, and we only want to copy the first 4 characters. Build a run, and we will get halt Bob. If we copied 5 characters over now, then we would get the exclamation, which is not what we want. So we only copy over the substring halt without the exclamation, right? So in this case, we can use a substring to replace some characters within this string, string 1. There are some additional overloads that you can find in the documentation. Next, we also have a member function, the copy member function, which allows us to copy a substring from the calling object, in other words, this object, the standard string instance, string 1 in this example, to a C string. So I have a standard string, string 1 up here, which I initialize to halt Bob with an exclamation, and I want to copy that over to a C string, which I have initialized here a C string with 15 elements, and I use the empty list initialization to initialize that to a bunch of nulls. Few comments here. The first argument here is going to be the C string that we want to copy to. Second argument is going to be the number of characters that we want to copy over. And finally, we have the index where we start. You can see these are a bit different than some of the member functions that we've used before. So I do the copy operation, and then I go and print that C string out. If I build a run, we copy over those 11 characters, so we get halt Bob printed out. How do I know how many characters are in the string again? I can place my typing caret within that string literal, press Ctrl K, Ctrl I as I discussed before, and we can see that that has 11 characters, including the null terminating character. So that is why I specify 11, because it's important to note that with this, it does not copy over the null terminating character. For example, if I go and remove the list initialization, that C string is now going to contain garbage basically. If I build a run, we will not get what we expect. Okay, we've discussed this before. But because I use the empty list initialization, that will now be or contain a bunch of null characters. So in that way it is safe to use with the copy member function. And of course, if I only want to print out something specific, so if I only want to print out Bob, then I can specify 6 again is the index, and then 4 here, the second argument is going to be how many characters, in this case 4 characters. Build and run that, and you see we get Bob printed out. Always remember when you're counting these, it is going to start at index 0, so 0 is going to be the first character in the string, so in this case H. And if you print out 4 now, then it should print out halt. Build and run and we get halt. Now I would like to mention something else here. If I do Ctrl spacebar, we can see that this returns a size t. Now that's not particularly helpful in this case, but if we take a quick look at the documentation, we will realize that what it actually returns is the number of characters that is copied over to the C string. So what I can do is, the size is not going to be negative, so we can use size t. It returns size t, so it makes sense for us to have the type be a size t as well. And we want 11 characters here. That is if we want to copy the entire string, but actually let's go with the previous example. Just to make this maybe a bit more interesting, I'll go with 6 here. And I'll copy 4 characters, I'll copy Bob exclamation again. Build and run here. We get Bob. So what can we do with that now? Well, as I mentioned before, if we have some C string that is now going to contain garbage, or whatever else it's going to contain, then what we can do is we can use that size that we get back from that. Again, the string copy function is going to return the number of characters that are copied. So what we can do is, in this case, we're actually copying some substring over. So you can use whatever variable name you want here. I'm just using substring length just to illustrate here, and I want to pass that in here because remember the length is now used for the index. But remember again, we start at index 0, so this operation is not going to affect the C string as it was before. In the next position, we are going to put a null terminating character. Okay, so again, remember the difference here that we have. Let's say 4 here. Okay, we copy 4 characters over. So this is going to be 4. This means we assign the null character to that index, index 4. But remember, Bob is going to start at index 0, so 0, 1, 2, 3. And at index 4 then we will have the null terminating character. That should work fine now, and that is how we can get the size, basically following which we want to assign the null terminating character. Okay, so that is a handy trick when working with this copy member function. And we get pop printed out, we don't get any weird results from this. That is the only issue that you have to be concerned with the copy member function. That is, it does not append a null terminating character at the end of the C string following the copy operation. To wrap up this lecture, we've talked about how we can return or get a substring from the current standard string instance. We can use the substr member function, substring member function. We can pass in the substring starting index and then the amount of characters that we want to return. Alright, we've also discussed the insert and replace member functions, where we can insert additional characters at a specified index. I've not discussed every single overload that we have with these member functions, but just a couple. We have a full version of the insert member function where we can specify a number of copies and the specific character to insert. At a particular index, we can copy a string to insert. At a particular index, we can also specify a string to insert, and then also a substring to insert by specifying the substring index and the substring length. Of course, we can also pass in a C string as we've seen. The insert member function is overloaded to work with C strings as well, and then we can replace characters starting at an index by using the replace member function. Alright, then next we can copy a substring from a standard string to a C string. So with the copy member function, we can copy a substring from the current standard string instance, that is the calling or this standard string instance, to a C string. Now the resulting C string may not be null terminated, so you have to be careful with that. And that is since the copy member function does not append the null character at the end, so you have to take care of that by yourself. And with this we specify the C string destination, so some C string identifier, and then the number of characters to copy and the index. Alright, that is going to wrap up this lecture. We're not quite done with substrings. Of course, we have more operations that we can perform by extracting substrings, by searching for substrings within a string and so forth, and we'll discuss those in upcoming lectures.